So you mentioned the missing years of Jesus. Also, one of my favorite topics to talk about. I call that the yada 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 years. Like Jesus was born, yada yada yada. He comes on a donkey. I
Yes.
always love, I love always looking into that because there are so many stories of Jesus going to India, Jesus going to Tibet, Jesus going to Egypt. Now I heard Japan. That's the first time I've heard that. From your research, what have you seen or what have you heard about Jesus's missing years? And on a more critical standpoint, anyone listening who was like, well, if it's not part of the canon, you really can't talk about it. If there's so many stories about Jesus and about what he did and the miracles he performed and all these things, it just seems as a storyteller not very logical to pull out 18 years of arguably some of the most interesting parts of the story, the hero's journey of Jesus, because he's still a boy when we leave him at 12. And then that's when he starts becoming a man. That's those 18 years is when he becomes Jesus. Because at 12, there's indications. It's essentially Michael Jordan in high school. You see that there's some brilliance there, but we haven't seen. But so it's kind of like Jordan doesn't make his high school team. Yada yada yada. He wins 6 championships with the Bulls. You miss the most important story of how he became who he became, and why was that left out? Why was that never? No one even made up stories to put in the canon to kind of piece these things together. So I'd love to hear what you've come across.
Hmm. Well, I find it really intriguing because the gospel writers present Jesus to us as a human being. But very often, I think we leapfrog to the orthodox story of Jesus as God. And if we leapfrog to that conclusion, then we don't have to explain his intelligence or his spiritual awareness,
Journey. Yeah.
or his abilities. That you don't need the journey. If he's God, of course he's going to be brilliant. But the gospel writers present him as a human being. He's the carpenter's son. And if you are willing to engage with Jesus as a human being before leapfrogging to that theological conclusion, of course you're going to want to know, how did he get this? And the crowds ask that. How did he get this wisdom? Isn't this the carpenter's son? They actually put that question. And when you take the New Testament out of its bubble and you start reading the New Testament in the context of Greek thought in which it belonged, you begin realizing that the New Testament writers are playing with Greco-Roman themes and they're playing with Greek ideas and they are taking Greek worldview and sharing it and then putting a little spin on it. They knew Greek thought like the back of their hand because it was the world in which they lived. The Apostle Paul knew Plato like the back of his hand, and he was clearly a huge fan. He admitted that I think there are about 12 sayings of the Apostle Paul that are really Plato quotes, where he's just changed a word here or there. And if Jesus's followers were that well informed, were citizens of the world in that kind of way, were philosophers and thinkers, and were playing with language and ideas that came from the East, that came from Egypt, if his followers were like that, might not Jesus have been like that too? When we've got the Gospel of John, where it's hard to put a piece of paper between John the writer and Jesus the teacher, is it not possible that Jesus knew these Platonic ideas that form the prologue to the Gospel of John, that form the whole framework for the Gospel of John? Is it not possible that Jesus was a seeker of truth and a scholar and a philosopher? And if he was, then how did he get that? Did he get it by reading at the local libraries? Did he get that by sitting at the feet of people who read at the local library? Did he travel? And in the enigmatic figure of Joseph of Arimathea, a very wealthy person, there's the hint of a possibility he may have been able to travel. because the legends around Joseph of Arimathea is that he was a merchant, an international trader, that he traveled internationally. If he could do it, then could Jesus have done it? It was a period in history where international travel was uniquely easy. You could travel the world in a way that would not be repeatable between the end of Rome in the West and the 1800s. It's entirely possible Jesus traveled and sat at the feet of other teachers, read things, learned things, visited other communities. And I lean to the view that Jesus did go to India. I don't have any physical evidence I can bring forth and say, and here's the proof, but it's a direction that I'm interested in looking. And if I did want to find an artifact that would really give legs to this idea, it would be to the monastery in Hemis that I would go, in the hope that I might get sight of the extensive records of that community that go all the way back to the period of Jesus. And the story from out of that monastery at Hemis is that there are records that refer to an individual who was there at the right time and whose name and behavior and character would sound very familiar to someone familiar with the Jesus of the Gospels. I'd like to see that. The monastery hasn't made that public, even though the narrative of the place has remained. But that's what I'd like to probe. And I have a feeling that that's the most solid place to go if you're looking for evidence of Jesus's travels.
To watch the full video, click on the link below, and don't forget to subscribe.